Good afternoon. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Des Moines, August 4 edition. My name is Matt Busick and I'm your president. I appreciate Doug Saltzgaber stepping in for me the past couple of weeks. I had to meet a friend named Mr. Coronavirus for the past couple of weeks.
Glad you appreciate it, Matt.
Yeah. So yeah.
Did you invite him to a meeting?
All is well. He's a sticky guy. I'd stay away if I were you. First thing I'd like to do is welcome back Bryce Oakley. Bryce, if you could stand and wave, let everybody know you're here. I'm not sure if everybody knows this, but Bryce was formerly a member of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. He's here as John Tone's guest today, a resident of Des Moines, longtime resident of Des Moines, and contributor to our community on both sides of the political aisle, I understand. So we're happy to have you. Thank you. Next on my list of things to do is say happy birthday to a couple of our members. Today is Katie Lynn Butcher. Does anybody know how he's pronounced? Butcher. Butcher. That's a little awkward. Katie, forgive me. Thank goodness Katie's not here today. She's out celebrating her birthday. But Katie is a relatively new member to our club. She's an attorney and works at Mid-American Energy, currently working on our grants committee. She's fantastic. If you get a chance to get to know her a little better, you should. And one way to do that is to reach out and say happy birthday today. You can get to her contact information through Club Runner and the app. If you don't have that on your phone, do download that. The other happy birthday today is to Dr. Doug Dorner, a member of our club for about 15 years, but Doug's been a longtime fixture of our community, really important member of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. He was a physician and ran the family practice residency at Lutheran Hospital. Now, when you reach out to Katie, I'm sure she's going to be excited to hear that happy birthday from you. Doug, maybe not so much. He's kind of like me, trying to avoid acknowledgement to the fact that we're getting a little older. So, but please say hi. Now, on to the show. Today, Greg Edwards, Mr. Greg Edwards, President and CEO of the Greater Des Moines Convention and Visitors Bureau, will deliver our moment of inspiration. Thank you, Greg. Greg's a great guy, and he volunteered. You too can volunteer for a moment of inspiration, as I mentioned a few weeks ago. Very important part of our program, and we need your help there. After Greg, of course, Greg will lead us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance and four-way test. After Greg, Brittany Freud. Brittany, if you could please stand up. Brittany is also a relatively new member to our club. She joined about a year ago. Brittany is Senior Vice President of WB Realty and a new mom for the third time. She just welcomed Olivia Ray to her family on April 19th. So congrats to you, Brittany. And welcome to our club. We're excited to see you getting involved.
Thank you.
All right, Greg, it's your turn.
Oh, thank you for that round of applause. And yes, I am standing. So, these words of inspiration are rather difficult to come about. I'm sure you all agree if you've done this before. I did all kinds of research. I looked at quotes from famous people, John Kennedy and Margaret Thatcher and Sister Teresa, and on and on and on. And well, I just couldn't pick one, but then I was inspired. I finally found one. So here it is, folks. Before you criticize someone, you should walk a mile in their shoes. That way, when you criticize them, you're a mile away from them, and you'll have their shoes. That, my friends, is your inspiration. By the way, that was written by the famous inspirational writer Jack Handy. One of my favorites. All right, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the four-way test, please.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
So help me, Rotary. All right, remain standing. Standing ovation for Brittany. Oh, first, greet your guests. Don't shake hands. Don't breathe on anybody.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Good job, Greg. I tried to do that with my speakers, so I know how important it is.
I get the pleasure of introducing today's speaker, Bill Wright. If you don't recognize Bill, you should at least recognize his name as you see it on hundreds of signs throughout the metro. I think I passed his name 20 times just on the way to work. Bill is the managing director over at CBRE Hubble Commercial, where he manages a group of 40 real estate professionals. He recently celebrated his 30th year in the industry. Bill's been recognized as a leading broker in the office and retail market. And during his tenure, he has worked on thousands of real estate transactions. So he will be providing a general overview of the real estate market for us today, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts, Bill.
Thank you, Brittany. It's a pleasure to be here today and get started here. Some general market observations of what's going on in the commercial real estate market. There has been record performance in the past 24 months, and it's really been bolstered by two things. Really by investment sales, multifamily investment sales, and STNL, which is single tenant net lease. So for those of you, like my office is really involved in come and go sale leasebacks. That's an example of a single tenant net lease. So that's been leading the way. For those of you familiar with CBRE, we have a lot of youngsters in our office. I call them kids, youngsters. I have a lot of 22 to 27-year-olds working at the company. I'm blessed. We've had a lot of success recruiting people, and I remind them all the time that the real estate market does cycle over time, and there are ups and downs. And a lot of them, I just celebrated, as Brittany mentioned, 30 years in the business, and I have to remind them often that this will cycle, and it's not always going to be like the past 24 months have been, which has just been incredible considering what we've gone through with the pandemic. When I do that, they look at me like I'm the grumpy old man in the office, and they just kind of, yeah, whatever, he's talking. But we are in a cycle, and I'm going to talk a lot about that today. Our industrial market is reaching new heights, resulting just an explosion of capital investment, new construction in the market. This is national. I have a number of slides here that talk about that nationally, and it's happening in Des Moines also, and I'm going to talk a lot about that. There's really uncertainty in the office market. Hybrid and work from home strategies continue to be prevalent. A lot of companies are still establishing what those strategies are going to be. And it's going to be a challenge, and the honest truth is it's going to be a challenge for a while in Des Moines, especially downtown. I was talking to Greg at lunch about that, we always want to see our CBD, we want to see it thrive, and we want to see people working down there. And I mean, it's palatable right now when you're down here to see there's less activity here on a daily basis as there was pre-pandemic. There is incredible strength in the retail markets, which is incredible because I've been through many cycles of the retail market. That market tends to cycle a little bit quicker than some of those other markets, and there's incredible strength there. There's an insatiable appetite for multifamily apartments that has really led our investment, real estate investment here recently. And I'm going to exaggerate when I tell you this, but it's kind of true. What I'm going to say is, I can sit down, like, I'm gonna use Doug, I like to pick on Doug, so I'll use Doug as an example.
Everybody does.
Doug could be like the most sophisticated real estate investor possible, right? We could talk about fundamentals, and we're talking about an office or retail or an industrial building. Doug and I are having a good conversation. We're talking about vacancy and re-tenanting costs, and we're talking about all the fundamentals. And then at the end of the conversation, I can say to him, oh, by the way, I have this multifamily apartment deal. And I swear the person I'm talking to, it feels like they just dropped all fundamentals from their conversation, from their mind, and they're just like, you do? And they want to know more about it, and they're buying on pro forma, not buying on actual rents. And it has been incredible what's happened in our multifamily marketplace. I can stand here today and tell you that, in the investment marketplace, you see offering memorandums, and they might be 5.5, 6 cap rates on multifamily, which sounds extremely aggressive. But the reality of the situation is, those are a lot of the times those financials are built on pro formas. They're not built on actual. And the real cap rates on a lot of this apartment product that's getting traded is 4.5%. I mean, it's very aggressive. And I think it's going to work. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I think it's not going to be a situation where those folks are going to get hurt too bad, because now interest rates have risen and it's going to be harder to own a single family house. The land grab continues. Des Moines is a very, companies, developers, they want to do business in Des Moines. They are all over Des Moines looking for land opportunities. I'm first going to talk about the industrial market. This is record high asking rents. There is a significant pipeline. There's over 4 million square feet of speculative industrial space under construction in Des Moines, primarily in the Grimes, that northwest area, and Ankeny, Altoona. And we've never seen 4 million built in Des Moines before. It's eye-opening what's happening here. We have outside developer interest. You have companies like Van Trust, Endeavor, Sealy & Company, Ilex, Opus, Block. These are not Des Moines-based companies. These are companies from outside Des Moines that have discovered Des Moines and said, we want to build high-cube industrial space in Des Moines. Also, there's a lot of active local developers here: R&R, ATI, Hubble, Graham, Signature, DRA, Alaba. All those companies are all involved in the industrial market. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about outlook, but it's going to be an interesting time in Des Moines. I mean, industrial is the darling of Wall Street right now. It's the darling of investment companies, the darling of REITs. It's what everyone wants to be in, and it's going to be a little interesting in Des Moines. Like I said, we usually throw 1 million square feet to the market a year. Now we're throwing 4 million square feet. Here's a graph on industrial supply and vacancy. As you can see, in terms of supply in Des Moines, you can see just the supply keeps rising, and vacancy rates, the black line, keep dropping. So, excuse me, this is a national map, I believe. Yeah, this is billion square feet, so this is the national map. So you can just see supply keeps rising. Vacancy nationally is under 3%. That is far better than stabilized, right? I think all of us that are landlords would like to have less than 3% vacancy. Industrial absorption, if you just, I know this is small writing, but if you just look at the right-hand side of the graph, look at the graphs, the bars, columns that, the net absorption, and these are quarterly rankings. I mean, we've never had absorption of industrial space like we have right now. When COVID hit, a lot of us started shopping more internet, e-commerce, and the result has been just an explosion in companies improving their e-commerce platform, and it requires industrial space. Industrial rent growth, look at this. I mean, that is 1 quarter nationally, almost 15% rent growth. Granted, those are annualized numbers. They annualize them, but that's what we saw in 1 quarter is 15% annual growth. That's not sustainable. I mean, it's just not. But what I will tell you is in Des Moines, our high cube industrial rates on average are going to be, somewhere in the $5.50 range, $5.25, $5.50. The national average is $9.70. So, I mean, you have just incredible, there's still room for growth in Des Moines. Des Moines is still seen, although costs seem very high compared to what they were, or what they are in other areas, what they were in the past. But in comparison to other markets, Des Moines is in a very favorable position and will continue to see growth. I'm now going to switch over to the office market. The big news about this has been what has been the impact of COVID and the return to work models. Let me tell you, in terms of the work from home strategy, there were companies in Des Moines, significant companies like Nationwide Insurance is the best example. They were going to go to a work from home strategy for a lot of their employees prior to COVID. But what COVID did is it just sped it up. I mean, they just, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we're speeding up and now it's more and more. So there were companies that already were headed that direction, and that was going to have an impact on office space, but COVID sped it up. And now, because of the pandemic, you have companies, a lot of companies are doing a hybrid work from home environment where they're 3 days in, 2 days home, or vice versa, or what the case might be. You are going to see very little new construction in Des Moines. I do not expect any office towers built anytime soon. Any of the new construction has really been boutique office corridors. East Village, a lot of companies like the kind of the vibe of the East Village, so they're building offices there. Kettlestone out in Waukee, where Holmes Murphy went, you've got some new office out there. Grace Landing, Sherman just finished a 72,000 foot building in Grace Landing, delivered during COVID, and it's 80% leased. I mean, so there are success stories out there. Christensen Development did a building in the East Village, fully leased. I think they call it the Sawtooth Building. So you have examples like that. Oaks on Grand, which is on that Grand Avenue headed out to the West Des Moines Recplex. You have a building that was done down there, and that building has tenants in it already. So there are success stories out there. I think what you're going to see in the office market is landlords are really going to work hard to try to keep their lease rates steady. And I think there's going to have to be concessions offered in tenant improvements and rent abatement. That's going to be a way to attract tenants. But when you start lowering your asking rents, you impact investment value. And when you impact investment value, then your lenders get concerned. And when your lenders are concerned, then you're really concerned. So I think there's a general theme right now that, hey, I don't see any landlords really just, thrashing asking rents right now. I think most of them are trying to keep them stable. There are holes in the central business district, no doubt about it. I mentioned Nationwide. Nationwide's vacated all of 1,200 Locust. That is 365,000 feet. You have Hub Towers under contract to be sold to an outside developer right now, but not a developer, investor. And that has the Boyas basically vacated most of that building. EMC is leasing back part of that building, but I don't think they're fully utilizing it. Ruan Center, Ruan 2 Ruan, they have holes. 801 Grand has some holes now. There's uncertainty with Meredith, of course. So there's lots of things to watch on the office market and a lot of space that's going to be available downtown. I think for the most part, suburban Des Moines has done, where Brittany spends a lot of her time. I think they've done pretty well out there and maintained. I mean, there are some holes, but maybe not quite as prevalent as we've seen downtown. We do have nationally rising vacancy rates, 16.9% nationally. That's a pandemic era high. And we have reduced absorption. Q2 nationally, we absorbed 6.2 million square feet. Keep in mind, absorption is existing buildings that are leasing up and also new construction that is built to suit type space. Our average for a second quarter was 14.5 million. So we're recovering, but we're still, just in that stat alone, we're 8 million square feet behind where we kind of think we should be. These are actual Des Moines numbers. So I on the office, I kind of brought it back down to Des Moines level. You can see the absorption's negative all the way across. So we've been, since Q2 2020, beginning of the pandemic, no surprise, it's been negative absorption all the way through. That means we have less lease space than we did. Overall net absorption is the columns, and then the orange line is western suburbs, the greenish line is CBD, and then the average greater Des Moines in the black. So as you can see, in Q2 2020, we had vacancy, call it of 12%, and we're now up, approaching 17%. So it's significant. We're seeing more vacancy in Des Moines, and this stat is no surprise. Vacancy trend by submarket. As you can see, we everywhere is higher vacancy pretty much except for Ankeny. Ankeny's kind of the one spot, but you know, your Des Moines, when you're talking Des Moines, your two big submarkets are western suburbs and CBD. I mean, when somebody comes from outside Des Moines, I basically say we have two office markets, CBD and western suburbs. But we do track, at CBRE, we track them all. This is the big story, sublease vacancy, and I don't think this is going to be a huge surprise, but we have more sublease space available, approaching 400,000 square feet than we've had in years. And it is that, you know, eventually landlords are still receiving rent on that sublet space, but eventually the primary term runs out and that becomes true vacancy. So that's a story. I mean, Voya's in that number. I mean, Voya spaces for sublet. You know, we had companies like Deere put space on sublease. I mean, you have companies that put sizable spaces on the market. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the retail market. This is one that my team spends a lot of time on, and it's a fun market, although it's not as fun right now because there's not as much inventory. There is hardly any new speculative construction going on in the retail market, and if there is, it's either pre-leased or it's build-to-suit activity. The days of building speculative retail centers are probably over for at least the time being. In the early 2000s, I don't know if you guys felt it, but as the guy in the business every day, I felt it. It felt like a unanchored neighborhood strip center was getting built on every corner. And lenders aren't agreeing to do that anymore. So, and rightfully so. It is pretty much all activity is build to suit, which means it's I'm building a building only for this tenant, or it's significantly pre-leased. The growth areas continue to be Jordan Creek, Ankeny, and Waukee. And then of course, West Des Moines being Jordan Creek. Projects to watch, I think the areas that you really want to watch for in the retail market, Costco's building their second Greater Des Moines store up on 36th Street up in Ankeny, right on the interstate. There's a lot of development planned in that area. I think as Ankeny continues to grow north, I think that's going to be a really interesting area to watch. Herd Development is developing the new Topgolf in West Des Moines. That's at the Parkways development, they call it, which is corner of Jordan Creek Parkway and Mill Civic Parkway right next to IMT. And that's going to be a really important area to watch. Keytown Loop, Waukee, where Live Nation's now under construction, building a new concert venue. That's on Kettlestone, Grand Prairie Parkway out there. That's an important area to watch. And then just the recently announced Waukee Town Center, which for those of us in the business isn't that much of a recent announcement. We've known about that one, but they have a significant discount anchor that is unnamed, but we all know who it is. That's going to be anchoring that Waukee Town Center on Alice's Road, right there in Waukee. So that is a very significant development, and I think has 300,000 square feet plus of retail space. I think your next, your junior anchors, retail junior anchors, that's probably their next spot they're headed. You're going to see a lot of more growth in Waukee. Lease rates continue to rise for good retail, well-located retail. National growth of 2.4% in Q2. That doesn't seem huge, but there's no other sector of our real estate market where rents are that high other than retail. I mean, a lot of your new retail projects now, I saw Herd Development, they're doing a building with Jersey Mike's kind of right by REI and in that area, Container Store, $39 triple net. It's a big number. Small retailers have trouble paying that. You got to be a national, likely a national, or at least a local with a really good business plan. There's very limited availability of second generation space. All that second generation space, those neighborhood strip centers we built in the early 2000s, they've all been absorbed by medical and office and kind of quasi-retail uses, and there's really not that much space available out there. The headwind that I see in the retail market is inflation last quarter on an annual basis of 9.1% is outpacing wage growth, 4.4%. There is not a retailer I know or a restaurant I know that's not having trouble hiring people. I mean, it's a real problem. All you have to do is go to eat at restaurants and you can tell. Retail consumer sentiment versus wage growth. This is, consumer sentiment is settling back down a little bit. and which is the green line there. So as you can see, I think in general, this refers to my headwind comment. I think in general, the American public is not feeling quite as confident on spending as much money at retail than they were a year ago. Could be a number of reasons. Government's not helping out as much, with help. There's inflation, certainly the inflationary pressures. So wage growth is just at, look from 2017 to 2020, average quarterly wage growth was like 1.5%. We had 8.5%, and then we've had 4 consecutive quarters of over 4%. I mean, this is serious. Labor is expensive. I mean, I have a lot of fast food clients, Taco John's, Slim Chickens, and I mean, they're paying $16, $17 an hour to high school kids to work. It's a real issue, and it's cutting into margins. Retail availability rate, this is lifestyle, total retail, neighborhood, and power center. The basic message is here is look at the graph. I mean, since 2012, we're just eating up all of our retail space and we're not replacing it with new space. Land's expensive, construction costs are expensive, and when you're paying a high number for retail ground, you need a high rent, and it's difficult to do speculative construction. Retail completions, this furthers my point. You look at rolling 12-month completions, that's the blue graph. I mean, and total retail completions are in black. I mean, in both cases, the numbers are getting lower. We're just not building as much. So when you have a really good retail site and you can make the numbers work, there's probably a great case study, a business plan to put together to build. Retail rent growth, this is pretty, you can see just recently since 2019, 2020, the year-over-year rent growth, it's very strong. Rents continue to rise, and the result is going to be we're all going to feel it at when we buy our hamburgers or our donuts or whatever we're buying at a retail store. It's going to be more expensive because it's more expensive to lease space. Retail sales by category. This is going to be no surprise to anyone. This is year-over-year growth. Gasoline, the rise in gasoline accounts for such a huge part of where there's retail sales growth. The other is miscellaneous store retailers. That's going to be your dollar stores. A lot of us are shopping more at dollar stores. And then restaurants are still doing very, very well. As you can see, negative growth from electronics and appliance stores, hardly any growth in sporting goods, hardly, department stores even, health and personal care stores, pretty minimal. Multifamily market is the last area I'll cover. Again, we've had record investment in a really very compressed rate environment. We had $515 million of apartments sell in the Des Moines area last year. That is a 60% increase over our 5-year average. We had 197 transactions last year. Normally we have 69. Incredibly strong absorption. The vacancy rate in Des Moines is 4.3% at year end last year. We're also seeing great rent growth. And the new construction pipeline is balanced. My sister company, Hubble Realty Company, we're very involved, especially downtown, in building apartments. And we're taking advantage that our market just has not gotten overbuilt. We're building apartment complexes and they're filling up. And new construction is being delivered in all areas of the metro. Here's a map. This is again a local information. Vacancy rates, you see them just dipping. All the lines are vacancy rates for the various segments of Des Moines. And then the column is new pipeline of new development. So we're very, very balanced. It looks like this year we're delivering just under 2,000 units. That's very balanced for Des Moines. You can see the average, the first column is average from 2016 to 2018. They're averaging 2,300, 2,400 units. And we had a little bit of blip after that where we had some vacancy, but Des Moines continue to grow. People want to live here. Multifamily vacancy by submarket. As you can see, they're very competitive. Altoona, hardly any vacancy, 2%. Ankeny, 3%. CBD, Des Moines, 7.8%. South, 5.4%. Western suburbs, only 3.4%. And Greater Des Moines, only 4.3%. We were at 7.3 7 quarters ago. So very healthy. Here's the fundamentals of each segment of the market with average rates. The big column to notice here is the average rent per square foot. In new development, a lot of times an average rent per square foot, you try to get somewhere close to $2.50, especially in the CBD downtown environment. These numbers keep rising. You can see in CBD average, this is across all units, 4,400 units, we're at $1.51. So that means you're in a 700 square foot apartment, you're paying $1,050 a month. It's getting to that point where new development continues to be prosperous, you're able to do it and you can prosper at it. Okay, my outlook, I'll finish up with this. I expect a slow trickle downward in investment activity. It's not coming to a complete stop. There's still lots of liquidity in the market. There's still people with 1031 exchanges, but the appetite is going to continue to wane a little bit. We're not turning the faucet off, but it's going to get a little bit less quarter by quarter. And there's really a lack of inventory, and then rising interest rates impact that too. I do expect, usually the year before a presidential election, things kind of slow down. I expect that's going to happen again, and then we'll see something rebound after the 24 election. Multifamily is going to remain strong. Rising interest rates are resulting in less home buyers and an increased number of renters. There's going to be more and more people that can only afford to rent. There's going to be continued strength in the industrial market. However, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be some short-term concessions because we're delivering 4 million square feet, and that's unheard of in Des Moines. So I think it's going to be very competitive, but I still think Des Moines has been found as an industrial location, and it's going to be very positive. The office market is going to be slow to rebound. It's going to take many years. I put probably many years to absorb the large blocks in the marketplace, and I expect suburban is going to outpace CBD. Retail is going to continue to perform well. Land pricing and new construction costs will be a limitation on any new construction. And I fully expect Des Moines is still going to be a very good place to do business, and developers are going to be grabbing as much land as possible and leading to higher land prices. So that's my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Bill,
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
what do you know about the Blackbird project?
In terms of whether it's going to happen,
Yeah.
no, I just don't see it happening. I mean, that's my opinion. I have no factual grade, but yeah, when you look at those numbers, I mean, you almost got to get like $3 square foot per month rents to make that work, and it's just we're not there yet. And Des Moines, I think Des Moines, we need to all pat ourselves on the back because when we grow, Greg, we grow at like normal. We're not Denver, we're not Phoenix. We don't go out and overbuild. I mean, there's certain segments where you go, oh, we built a little too much that year. But we generally in market don't overbuild. I mean, if you threw that many units on a downtown market, I mean, it would create some havoc in the market. I personally think that the next, the opportunities are out there is like, you see what's going on at the financial center, they're trying to do the hotel project. Does that someday, and I have no basis, I mean, I don't think Jesse's here, I have no basis to know, but, could that be, small floor plate would probably sit well for multifamily. I look at the old Bank of America building at 317 6th Avenue, I see that as an opportunity. What's interesting in Des Moines is we redeveloped a lot of those small floor plate, older office buildings like in early 2000s and turned them into apartments, and it's worked. I mean, there's just example after example after example of developers that did really nice work. There's not as many of those available, but there's some of those, but I just don't see new construction to that scale. Obviously Hubble's a sister company, and I sit in all of our Wednesday development meetings, and I see what we did at Link was a major down for Link being Southwest 11th and MLK. I mean, we built 3 phases of that. Now Sherman's starting, I think they're calling it the Meridian. I thought it was going to be called Nexus 2, but I think they're calling them Meridian. I just don't see it. I'd be shocked. I think that particular group has their hands full. Would be my guess. I don't know personally. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on Valley West Mall? Moving out, Yonkers vacancy?
It's like you were prepped for this because I expected that question. I don't know if current ownership of Watson's gonna be able to do it, or whether it's gonna eventually someday end up in somebody else's hands. My guess is it's probably the latter. I mean, I hope Watson can pull it off, but based on everything going on, it's excellent located real estate. 5 years ago, Bob, I would have told you convert the Yonkers building to office, try to mix an office component in there, because the fundamentals in the office market were good, and then COVID hit. So now you can't really look at office. I mean, obviously West Bank going across the street, huge claim dock across the street, huge wins for that area. I think it's probably got a multifamily component to it. I just showed you a graph of West Suburban retail apartments at like 3.4%. I think it's got a, probably is going to be a lot of it demoed. I think it's probably, the future of that site is multifamily, and then I think it's probably got retail out parcels where you do smaller, build to suit, restaurants, things like that. Because at the end of the day, Valley House Drive, or for those of us who still call it 35th Street, I mean, it's still it's fantastic real estate. It's just what's there today is not going to be, it's not survivable. Des Moines as a market, we have, we're, I don't know, I mean, what are we, 800,000 people, 750, we're somewhere in that range, right? Depending on how you measure it. We're probably a one mall market of real mall. I mean, Merle Hayes kind of demalled a little bit, and we certainly hope, I know there's a delay in the Buccaneers project, but that's a hugely important project for that area of the city, and I'm so excited to see that happen. And, if there's something like that, Bob, that would happen out at the Valley West, I could see, an entertainment piece. Like if I was Top Golf, I'm not Top Golf, but if I was Top Golf, I probably would have considered that site. I mean, what a fantastic site, but I think it's probably got demo, I mean, Von Maur's moving, aren't they moving out like Thanksgiving-ish time? That's gonna I walked it maybe a month ago, and there's just not much left. And you're gonna have to demo. I do think it's great real estate, and hopefully, whether it's Watson or somebody else, they can pull it off. I missed you over here. Yeah.
I drive up and down Grand for home, and it seems like a lot's going on there with that one big apartment house complex that young guys are redoing. It's lit up all the
Yep.
time, and then Bookie's project at 39, across the street, the Newberry project, and then the medical school leaving. What's going to happen?
Future.
What is happening there?
Yeah, so the question was really the future of Grand Avenue, and extending really from the fringe of downtown, probably, almost out to 63rd Street. My opinion is you have such good fundamentals, housing fundamentals in that area, that it's always going to be a desirable place to live. I think, and you look at Bookie sold all of his condos. I mean, aren't there like 28 of them or something like that? I mean, he's sold them all. I'm hugely a fan of, I think Ingersoll Grand Corridor is going to continue to improve the streetscaping that's been done. I think the big question there is always going to be DMU. And, I worked on the DMU project. I tried to sell it. It's now been pulled from the market. DMU is very likely going to retain a presence there, and I think they're going to retain a larger presence than maybe any of us in this room expected them to do. That's the hunch I have. It was very hard to sell during COVID, to sell an entire college campus. It was very difficult. We had people look at it, we had interested parties, and we had offers, but they never rose to the level. But I think that's a huge opportunity. I think it's probably also, you look at that 10-story tower clinic building. I mean, I got on the floor of the 10th floor, and I'm just like, you feel like you feel here today. You're just like, these views are incredible. And I think there's going to be, I think Grand Ingersoll Corridor is going to be fine. I do think that what the issue there is, they put all that money into that student education center, and it's gorgeous, and you have these huge lecture halls, and you have this gorgeous student center, and the question is, what do you convert that to? That was always the struggle. When I take buyers through there, they're like, I don't know if you've been in DMU's lecture hall, but it's like state of the art, like I've never seen. I mean, it seats like 400 people, and then they have on this other end on the far west end, they have 3 lecture halls that seat 150, 200 people. I mean, and they're all like the theater style seating. and you just go, okay, what are we going to convert this to? So that's going to be part of, that'll be interesting. I still think it would be a great school site if there was a charter school or a school that needed thing. What that campus lacks, and the big thing right now with college universities, I found this when I started marketing it, is there's a lot of universities in the U.S. that go bankrupt or go away, especially the for-profit ones, and they've all been converted to youth sports academies. And so they come in, they buy the campus, and then they use the dormitories for this, and they use. And I had a ton of youth sports academies reach out to me. The problem with that campus is you have no fields, right? There's no green space. It's you have a really nice gymnasium, but yeah, I'm still bullish on that area. Love that area. Yeah, Jason.
One, this is very informative. I'm a residential realtor, so hearing about some of the parts I don't deal with is great. But I, still will dabble in multifamily listings at times, and I'm experiencing just a massive influx of people from larger cities trying to buy up all of our multifamily. I assume you're seeing the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Long term, if more real estate that people live in is owned by people that don't come here, or even, I just saw one part of the building last week. She has no intention of even coming to see it. What do you think that's going to do to us long term?
Well, I'm an Iowa boy. I was born in Denison. I went to Simpson College. I'm been here for 30 years. I mean, I'm all about local Iowa. I try to buy local retailers. I try to do all those things, and so you're going to have, Des Moines' been discovered. You're going to have outside investment. I mean, it's happened, and we're probably not going to turn the boat. What I will tell you, in my opinion, Jason, is when the cycle turns in the real estate market cycle, we've been at that peak and we're kind of heading on the way back down, right? When it turns, those people you're referring to are probably the first ones that are going to sell for a loss. They're probably going to say, okay, this didn't work out. I did Des Moines. I bought at the height of the market, and then I tried it and it didn't work. That's my guess, is there's going to be opportunities. I mean, I know a lot of you in this room, and there's some of you that are very opportunistic real estate investors in this room, and you just, I think that's going to be the opportunity going forward. I don't think it's going to go away because Des Moines' been discovered, but there's always going to be opportunities, and it's just a matter of where we are in the cycle. What I tell you, Jason, though, is on the multifamily front, I don't know if it's going to get bad anytime soon, because with rising interest rates, I mean, my son's 26 and he and his fiance want to buy a house, and all of a sudden he did the math. He's got the mortgage calculator out now, thinking residential, and he's like, wow, I only can buy like $100,000 less house than I thought I was going to buy 6 months ago. And so what's the answer? Your answer's probably going to be renting for a while longer.
Right.
So I see it too. In multifamily, you're right. I mean, there are tons of people that buy product in sight unseen. And again, to my earlier point, when I was picking on Doug, sometimes the fundamentals just seem to go out the window when you're talking to a multifamily
Some
investor.
of those rates, like you were mentioning,
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have major projects in Des Moines. I'm talking major projects where the real cap rate was 4, if not had a 3 in front of it.
One more.
One more? Might not be one more.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Bill, thank you for an excellent presentation, really informative. I know all of us appreciate the opportunity to understand from someone like you who really understands the market top to bottom what's going on in Des Moines Metro. Thank you. In recognition of the precious time you donated to us, we're going to give a book in your honor to the Des Moines Public Library. Your book will become part of the Rotary Rosie Reader Van collection. This traveling library has reached scores of readers across Des Moines since 2020, when our club donated $40,000 to the library so that it could purchase it. So thank you. Okay, it's time to think about upcoming meetings. Please consider sharing what we all agree is one of the most valuable attributes of our club, our high-quality speakers. I'd really like you to consider upcoming programs and think about who you know who would be a terrific addition to our club and invite him or her to join you as your guest. I'm certain doing this is by far and away the simplest and the most efficient way, effective way for us to grow our club. And listen, if we're not growing our club, we can't keep doing the good work that we do across this metro. So please take that upon yourselves. Remember, any guest that you decide to bring in, you yourself need to RSVP by Wednesday at 9 a.m. The day before a meeting. So on August 11th, we're going to hear from a former diplomat from the U.S. Foreign Service. On the 18th, Jeff Fleming will be here to bring us up to speed on what's going on at the Des Moines Arts Center. On the 25th will be our Rotary District Governor's visit, Steve Weinke, who's a member of the Ankeny Club. And on September 1st, it isn't on the list, I am going to be your speaker. We're going to bring everybody up to date on the current state of affairs of the Rotary Club Des Moines. So we're going to dedicate an entire meeting to what's happening, both with our budget, our programming, our strategic plan. There's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes that I want to bring all of you up to date on. So please be here on the 1st if you can be. So with that said, Bryce, thank you for joining. Bill, thanks again. Brittany, thanks again. Make sure you wish those 2 people happy birthday. Appreciate you being here. We are adjourned.